garage, get this car jacked up and get this stuff put on.
Perfect.
Alright gang, we got the car in the air. Already got the bolts broke. Those are some real good jacks right here, man. Like, they hold a lot of weight. And I forgot what they call ESCO. They call ESCO floor jacks. You can find them anywhere, you know, so there's no need to leave a link because they're gonna be the same price almost everywhere you go. So just look up the ESCO floor jack with the flat pad on top. And I took the flat pad off and I used my Berger Motorsports jack pads for the BMW. So I'm finna get these wheels off and then we can go ahead and get this brake started. I'm gonna start with the back since all I'm doing on the back is replacing the pad and the rotor, and then we'll go ahead and do the front. Alright gang, I got the tire off, and you always want to make sure this hub is clean. So get you a wire brush, and we'll actually have all of the tires off. So make sure you clean this hub with a wire brush and wipe it clean. I might put a light coat of anti-seize on it just for future references. But the rear brake caliper, this clip is very, very easy to get off. All you have to do is grab it here. Let me get it in the camera. Grab it here and pull forward and pull out, and it'll come right off. And then after that, you have 2 bolts in the back of the caliper with caps on them. You remove those caps and you can take the caliper loose. So I'm gonna do that on both sides to get this baby ready to get the new brake rotors and brakes on. So for those bolts, you're gonna want to use a 7mm hex. And boom, there goes the caliper. And look how much meat I had left on that, gang. It was almost metal to metal, so it was definitely time. But what's weird is this side has a lot of meat left on it. So that's weird. But I guess that's just the way single pistons are. I mean, there's only so much you can do with a single piston caliper. I mean, it's not like it can be out of alignment or something like that, which it probably could, but I mean, that doesn't make any sense because it's just a piston on one side. So I mean, the whole brake pad, the whole brake caliper would be out of alignment if that was the case. All right, and to get this bracket off, I think it might be a 13, 15 is too, seems like it's too small. So it's a 14 to get the rear bracket off. Then you got the bracket. And I would be updating these and painting them, but it's no use because in the near future I'm gonna be upgrading this rear to a 4-piston rear caliper anyway, so there's no need for that. And now you need the small Allen key to take off the rotor. And that Allen key size is a, I wonder if this is, no that's not it. I think here we go here. Damn, that's too small too, gang, so this better be it. And there we go. For the brake, you're going to need a number 6 or 6 millimeter, I guess, Allen key, and that'll get the actual rotor itself off. And that'll get the rotor off. So now we can take this rotor off. If it's, hopefully it's easy to come off. There we go. So this is the old rotor. And I'm gonna show you it versus the new rotor. So that's the old rotor versus the new rotor, gang. And for some reason, this is supposed to be the same size. This one actually looks a little bigger. Unless it's just me looking at it. But I guess it's the same size. That one just looks newer, so it probably looks bigger. But when you take this off, you want to make sure you check on your emergency brake. Make sure everything is tight. And then clean as much crud away from this surface as possible, away from the bearing surface. And like I said, I'm gonna put a light coat of anti-seize on it, just so if I have to take it off again, or I'm gonna take it off again when I upgrade the caliper, it's gonna you know, it's gonna be easy to take off. But for this back, guys, it's pretty much done. You just put on the new rotor and do everything in reverse order than what I just showed you. So I'm gonna get it all set up and put on, and I'm gonna show you guys the finished product, and then we're gonna do the front. And check that out, gang. I know it's not the biggest rotor, but it look a hell of a lot better than the rotor that came off there. And it's gonna match with this front rotor. Like, look at that. Come on now, BMW. This embarrassing. This truck is a 2017. At least a 2-piston caliper should be standard on the front of any vehicle from BMW, especially with how much you pay for them. I mean, that's just cheap. But at least we got this back one done. So I'm gonna do the other rear off camera, since I showed you guys how to do this one. And then I'm gonna show you how to do this one. And this one is gonna be more in depth because there's certain steps you gotta do to get Tony's kit on here. Nothing crazy, no cutting or nothing like that, but just steps to make the installation easier. So I want to show you guys that full through, you know. So let's get this started. The back of the truck is down and the brakes are on all 4 corners. I know you guys ready to see this get installed. I know you guys ready to see this exhaust get installed, but trust me, it's coming soon. Just give me a minute. So the back brakes are done. New pads, new rotors. Now it's time for the front. So what I'm gonna start with is the push clip. You take this clip out the same exact way you take the rear clip out, and sometimes you can, I already took the actual sensor off. I took that off early to get it out the way, but sometimes you can pull it back like this. And if it's too tight, what you want to do is push this middle piece in like that, and then you can get it out. but it usually just pops right out. So just like that, and he's out of there. So let's set him to the side since he won't be going back on anyways. And it's pretty much the same steps as the back gang. If you got the single piston up front and out back, it's gonna be the same way. The two little caps here, and let me make sure if it's a 7mm hex up front too. Yeah, and it's gonna be the 7mm hex up front. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this down. And bam. It was a lot of meat left on the front because I did the front brakes not long after I bought the car. But once you take this front brake caliper off, you can just forget about it because you won't be using it again anyway. So I'm gonna clean this up as much as possible. Even though I won't be using it, I don't know why I'm cleaning it. And you want to sit the original caliper out of the way. Just let it hang because it won't be going back on, gang. So, and then after we do that, you want to hold on a minute here. Get that 14 socket again and release the caliper bracket. So hopefully it's not super tight. Well, hopefully it is super tight, but not tight enough for us to need a breaker bar. Nope. All right, so that's good. I'm gonna sit this caliper up here just to get it out the way, cause I'm definitely not using it again. You guys know we going 6 piston up front now, so now we can take these bolts out. Got one, going for the second one. And I got the second one. So that's the caliper bracket. So we're not using that, but we're gonna use these to bolt the bracket up to the spindle. So keep your factory bolts for your bracket. But what I wanted to show you guys is, if you can see here, you can see right here on this nub where the bolt goes into the bracket, and this nub on the bottom where the bolt goes down in the bracket, you see this casting mark? It's a little rib right here. You want to grind this little rib down, just the rib, just this little rib. You can feel it pokes out, because that's gonna stop the bracket from fitting good up against the spindle. So if you got a file or a Dremel or something, just this, it's like 1 or 2 millimeters tall. Just grind it down right here on this front face, and that's gonna help the bracket that Tony supplies right here fit on. And I'm gonna actually open this bracket up here on camera so you guys can get a good look at what it looks like. So let me get this open so you guys can see what this bracket looks like. Sorry, I'm standing behind the camera, but that's just a good angle for me to open this up to show you guys. Okay, so these are the bolts here that come with the new bracket, and I'm gonna show you where the bracket bolts up. The only modification you need to do, it literally takes 2 seconds to file that down, but I'm gonna do that off camera because, you know, I don't want a lot of dust and stuff or sparks getting on the camera. So I'm gonna show you guys what it looks like when it's done, but I'm gonna do that now. All right, gang, I got it shaved down. As you can see, it's just right there on that edge. Let me get this camera to focus. Yeah, you see where it's flat at now? And down here on the bottom is flat as well. And that's so the caliper can go on better. And that's the orientation of the bracket. It should be exactly like that. So you can pause the video or anything like that so you can see exactly the orientation of the bracket when it goes on. Just like that. So now I'm gonna put a light coat of anti-seize on here, extremely light, because you really just want to knock all the rust off. But I don't have a good wire brush enough to get deep down on the rust, so I'm gonna put a light coat of anti-seize, not thick enough to get on the rotor or anything like that. And then I'm gonna go ahead and add the rotor and caliper on. Let's put a dab on it and I spread that around. However thin it spreads out, that's fine. As long as it's some type of layer between the two surfaces. That's all you need. You don't want a big thick coat or anything like that. And you want to gently wipe off any excess. Alright, so that's a super thin see-through coat. You wipe this glove down before I grab the caliper. We'll grab the rotor. Slap this baby on now. Try to get the orientation right the first time. Hold on. Gently sit it down here. Try to turn this a little. Yeah, like that. Pop that baby on now. Just like that. And that's a huge difference in rotor size. I'm gonna go out and grab the old rotor that I took off and put it on. So you put the rotor locking nut in, and this brake rotor is definitely gonna need this rotor locking nut because it's super heavy compared to the factory little small rotor. So you definitely want to use that locking nut on there. Tighten that on there. So next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna mount the caliper up. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go ahead and mount this caliper up. So once you're done putting the caliper on, that's how it's gonna look. Just like that. And what I did was I bent the dust shield back, not far enough for it to touch anything on the top and the bottom, because most people would cut the little, because it's right on the little corners. The corners, it'll stop the caliper from going on. So I just bent the corner back. You can see it's like about a 1/4 inch. I bent the little corners back a 1/4 inch on the top and the bottom, so the caliper can have an easier time to go on. You can't really see the dust shield up under there. Well, yes you can. See, I bent it back about a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch, and that's how it's gonna look once it's on. And this is a factory rotor, so I mean, That's a pretty big upgrade, gang. That is a pretty big upgrade. Another thing I did is, if you can see the dust shield here, I cut that little, it's like a triangle piece shaped like a Dorito on the top and the bottom. I cut that down. You can bend it back, but when I bent it back at first, it pushed other parts of the dust shield out, and I'm sure it's gonna make it rub against the rotor. So you might wanna get the make sure you don't have any rubbing issues. And when you're at this point here, go up under and look all around the rotor while you spin it to make sure you're not getting any rubbing issues with the dust shield before you put it on. The next and final steps, we're in the home stretch here, is pretty easy, which is putting on the sensor. You know, just you can slide it right inside there. If you can see, the sensor slides right in the brake pad, and then you route it and hook it up in here. But this is the most part, this is the part here that people is usually scared to do, and that's taking the caliper off. I pushed the piston back in to push most of the fluid back inside the system, because this fluid is still very, very fresh, as I did the front and rear brakes not too long ago. So what you want to do is, before you unscrew this here, because I'm gonna reuse my stock rubber lines, you know, because I didn't get the steel braided lines, because I'm used to how the rubber lines feel, and I'm just used to that brake feel, so I don't want my brake feel to change. So what you do is, you get something like, I'm gonna use this vacuum cleaner stick here, and I'm gonna put a towel up against the seat, something that won't dent the leather. And what you do is, you push the brake down, and once you put the brake down, it closes all the I don't know what they're called, but the doors that go to each caliper, that closes them off. So when you unscrew it, it won't drip. It won't drip at all. If you leave the brake depressed and you unscrew this, it's gonna flow brake fluid. It's just gonna drip and drip, you know. So push the brake down to close those doors up in your brake system, and that's gonna stop it from dripping. So that's what I'm gonna do now, and I'm gonna show you what that looks like. So as you can see, I have my seat let up a little bit with the brake pedal depressed, and that's gonna stop the fluid from leaking out. And the reason I'm taking it, the brake line, most people will be like, well, why don't you just leave the brake hose connected up here and take it off of the caliper and put it in? But then it's gonna be brake fluid inside of the brake line, and I don't want that brake fluid inside of this brake line to drip all over this paint, because brake fluid will just tear this paint to shreds. So I'm gonna take the entire brake line off, then disconnect it from the caliper, away from the car. It's no brake fluid coming out at all. No brake fluid dripping. Now, if that pedal wasn't depressed, brake fluid would be flowing right now. All right, so I'm gonna take this, matter of fact, it's something else we gotta do to get this caliper out of here. Pull this clip up. Yeah, there you go. Then you can just get it right up. And pull this clip all the way out. There you go. Boom. Now you can take the caliper right with you. So I'm finna take this brake hose off and get it drained out so I can pop it on the new caliper. All right, now that I got the brake line clear of brake fluid, I'm gonna try to turn the rotor. Yeah, that'll make it a lot easier. All right, gang, my camera hat went dead because, as you know, I film with a DJI Osmo Pocket 2, and the battery life isn't the best, so the battery went dead. But this little clamp here that usually goes here, you won't be able to use anymore if you're going to use the stock brake lines, because the stock brake line is a little short and this caliper is a lot bigger. But it's not going to be in the way of anything. It's not loose enough to catch anything and not tight enough to kink, because this is about where it is, except this part is in there from the factory. So I mean, you could just leave it here if you want, but I'm gonna find some way to, I mean, keep it down permanently right here. You know, probably just zip tie it to the brake line, I meant to the brake sensor there, and that way I can use my factory brake lines. But I already pressure tested everything. There's no leaks, and that's pretty much how it looks there. I know it's a lot of light coming in through the window, but yeah, she looks a lot better. And I'm gonna show you this versus the other side, and that's what it used to look like. I mean, so that's a huge difference. Big difference. Huge caliper, huge rotor, and the rear actually matches now. So that looks good. I'm gonna get this wheel put on and then do the other side, and then I'm gonna do the brake in. I'm gonna bleed the brakes first. I'm sure you guys know how to bleed the brakes, and if you don't, it's a lot of videos up on it. I didn't want to waste camera time doing a boring brake bleed, but after I get the wheels and tires on and do the brake in, I'm gonna get some street shots, some rolling street shots, so you can see what your 35i X5 or X6 will look like with these brakes on the road coming through your wheels, so you can see what everybody else will see while you're driving with this brake upgrade.